The Philippines was almost a superpower. But how? And what went wrong? The Philippines, a strategic archipelago in the heart of Southeast Asia, a country blessed with natural beauty, natural resources, and a vibrant population. At the crossroads of the Pacific and Asia, it could have been a regional superpower. Yet its history is marked by turbulent politics, economic mismanagement, and missed opportunities. In this video, we'll explore how the Philippines was on the cusp of greatness. This is the story of how the Philippines almost became a superpower. What went wrong and what could have been? Before the arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century, the Philippines was not a unified nation. Instead, it was a collection of independent kingdoms and sultanates, each with its own culture, language, and political system. The most notable of these kingdoms were the Kingdom of Tondo, the Sultanate of Sulu, and the Rajahanate of Cebu. These kingdoms were actively engaged in trade with neighboring countries such as China, Japan, and the Malay archipelago. The Philippines was a vital part of regional trade routes, a hub of commerce between East Asia and Southeast Asia. Had it remained independent, it might have emerged as a significant maritime power, much like Japan or China. In 1521, Ferdinand Magellan arrived in the Philippines, claiming the islands for Spain. Over the next few decades, Spain established a colonial presence, culminating in the founding of Manila in 1571 by Miguel Lopez de Legazpi. The Spanish colonization brought Christianity, European governance, and the trade of the archipelago, but it also created deep divisions among the indigenous people. For over 300 years, the Philippines was ruled by Spain. While the Spanish rule brought new trade opportunities, it also caused widespread poverty, social inequality, and a loss of indigenous autonomy. The Spaniards established a colonial government, introducing feudal systems that enriched the Spanish elite while oppressing the native population. The Filipino people resisted Spanish rule in numerous uprisings. The most notable of these was the Philippine Revolution, led by figures like Andres Bonifacio and Emilio Aguinaldo. The revolution culminated in the declaration of the Philippine independence on June 12, 1898. But the struggle for autonomy was far from over. In 1898, following the Spanish-American War, the Philippines was ceded to the United States under the Treaty of Paris. While this marked the end of Spanish rule, it also began a new chapter of American imperialism. The Filipinos, who had just declared independence from Spain, found themselves under the control of new colonial power. Under American rule, the Philippines experienced significant changes. The U.S. introduced democratic reforms, a public education system, and improved infrastructure. The United States also made significant investments in agriculture, manufacturing, and public health, laying the groundwork for future economic growth. However, this new relationship was not without conflict. The Philippine-American War broke out as Filipinos, led by Emilio Aguinaldo, fought for their independence. The Philippines was ultimately pacified, but tensions remained. In 1935, the Philippines was granted Commonwealth status with a promise of full independence in 10 years. In 1935, Manuel Quezon was elected as the first president of the Philippine Commonwealth, a semi-autonomous government under American supervision. Quezon sought to modernize the country's infrastructure, agriculture, and education system. He also focused on activating national identity and independence, establishing Filipino as the official language. Quezon worked tirelessly to secure the Philippines' future. He pushed for reforms that encouraged foreign investment, improved trade relations, and helped the country begin the process of industrialization. Had World War II not intervened, the Philippines may have been on its way to becoming an economic powerhouse. In 1941, as tensions escalated in the Pacific, the Philippines became embroiled in World War II. The Japanese invasion in 1942 led to widespread devastation. The infamous Bataan Death March and the brutal occupation left a lasting scar on the nation. After the war, the Philippines was in ruins. Despite this, the country gained full independence from America on July 4, 1946, under President Sergio Osmanian. While the scars of war were still fresh, there was a sense of optimism in the air. The Philippines had regained its sovereignty and was ready to chart its own future. The Philippines, now fully independent, faced a challenging road ahead. President Manuel Rojas, the first president of the newly independent republic, focused on rebuilding the country's infrastructure, economy, and political institutions. Foreign aid and investments flowed in, and industries like agriculture, mining, and manufacturing began to show signs of growth. But the Philippines faced significant challenges. Corruption was rampant, the population was growing rapidly, and political instability loomed. Yet, despite these issues, the country's economy continued to expand, and the seeds for future growth were planted. In 1965, Marcos rose to power with a promise to modernize the country. He implemented ambitious infrastructure projects and sought to transform the country into a global power. His early presidency brought visible improvements in roads, bridges, and public facilities. There was a growing belief that Marcos would lead the nation into an era of prosperity. Marcos also sought to improve the Philippines' international standing. He strengthened diplomatic relations with America, Japan, and other countries, positioning the Philippines as a rising power in Asia. In 1972, Marcos declared martial law. What followed was the consolidation of power into his hands. Political opposition was crushed, media outlets were silenced, and the country's resources were siphoned off for the benefit of Marcos and his cronies. The Marcos regime became synonymous with corruption, cronyism, and economic mismanagement. The country's debt skyrocketed as Marcos borrowed extensively from foreign countries, while the Filipino people bore the brunt of economic stagnation. In 1986, after a disputed election and the assassination of the opposition leader, Benigno Aquino Jr., the Philippines erupted in protests. The People Power Revolution, a peaceful uprising led by the people, ousted Marcos from power and restored democracy. Marcos fled into exile, and Corazon Aquino, the widow of Aquino, became the country's first female president. Today, the Philippines is witnessing a resurgence. The BPO industry has propelled it to the global stage, and new infrastructure projects are being developed across the country. The country has a growing economy, an educated workforce, and a young dynamic population. But challenges remain. Poverty, inequality, and political instability still loom large. Can the Philippines rise to its full potential? The path to greatness is still possible, but it will take careful leadership, political reform, and the will to tackle the deep-rooted issues of corruption and inequality. Philippines, a country once poised to become a superpower, is still on the path to greatness. Its story is one of promise, struggle, and hope. If it can overcome its challenges and harness the strength of its people, there is no telling how far it can go. But one thing is clear, the Philippine story is far from over. Thank you for watching. What do you think? Could the Philippines have become a superpower? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section.